Make life a game you can win by setting your own rules rather than conforming to social conditioning. So, this is the idea that the life that you're playing, you don't have to play because your parents have said this, your school have said this, your cultural conditioning, your peers. You can go on a completely different path and you can define what's winning. So often we've defined what's winning is we've got to have this amount of money in our bank account. We're scaling our company this particular way. We're this particular weight. Like there's so many different parameters.
Can you talk a little bit about the movement that you're currently building and how you sort of think about building a movement and not a company?
So I've created a philosophy and has a set of principles and a way of being so people can navigate this challenging and unpredictable life and give them some element of control and feeling really great. One of the principles is actually the first principle. It's a little bit controversial, but the principle is escape the prison of passion and purpose by focusing on what you can do today, not tomorrow. Now, it's not that I'm against purpose, but I've actually think the passion and purpose, it's been thrown out there way too much. And everyone is a little bit like lost and thinking, well, I've got to find my passion and purpose. I've got to keep finding my passion and purpose. And when we do that, what it does is it can sometimes paralyze us. It can put us into a place of lack because we're thinking that we're not good enough right now. And we're also trying to find something so big. And but what I wanted people to do is if you live a purposeful life, you'll feel purpose. If you live a passionate life, you'll feel passion. So do the things that bring passion. And if you do focus on what you can do today, you'll get there rather than focusing on what you can do tomorrow. And it's incredibly empowering when we get to that place.
If you think about it in a business context, it also works for companies. I think sometimes we get caught up in these quarterly plans, five-year predictions, all that stuff, and it's sort of driving forward. And I think sometimes, especially when things are tight or hard, it's quite difficult to see the gap between where you are and where you have set yourself wanting to be. And I think intentions and intentionality is almost that pathway to purpose, because I think purpose is quite far. It's far off in the distance. And intentions can what help leaders of teams and people inside teams to almost actually move towards a goal and move towards something, with intention and with actually thought, as opposed to just spinning the wheels.
The second one is create exponential outcomes by leveraging energy instead of time. So you just mentioned before that you've stopped tracking time, which is really great. Because time, why do we measure time? Because it's easily quantifiable. It's the same reason why we measure our success against about how much money we have in our bank. Because it's something which our linear mind, our analytical mind can easily understand. So we track progress there. But we know that doesn't actually bring better results. We know that in the day, not all time is equal. It's the idea that meditators collapse time because by spending time meditating, they open up new neural pathways, and throughout the day, they're not reacting, they're responding. So effectively, they have more time in the day. It's that old Zen proverb, if you don't have time to meditate for 20 minutes, you should meditate for 2 hours, because you'll get more energy. Even though you've reduced the amount of time that you have in the day, you'll produce more energy. So what I want people to be doing is thinking about how are they showing up in their day. Are they bringing energy or are they losing energy? Are they the people around them? Are they setting themselves up to get great energetic results? And that's how you get the exponential outcomes. When structuring your day, making sure that when you know that you're at your highest flow state, don't allocate time to silly things like admin or anything like that. Make sure you're doing your really productive results. And also, are you doing things which are bringing you energy? Are you working with people who are bringing you energy? Just being really clear about that. It's an incredible one. And that's why we all have the same time in the day, but some people get exponential results and other people don't. It's because they're focusing on energy management rather than time. Third one is experience fulfillment, not just success, by focusing on desired feelings, not just outcomes. So, this is the idea that ultimately in life, what we're looking for is feelings. We want to feel a particular way. We want to feel love. We want to feel joy. We want to feel happiness. And what's happened before is that we've got so focused on outcomes, whether we want to grow our business to $10 million, we want to have this amount of money in our bank, we want to have this holiday, that we've forgotten that really why are we focused on those outcomes? It's because they give some form of feeling. But the problem is when we focus on outcomes, we may be predicting the wrong outcomes. We might be thinking we want this particular feeling, we think this outcome is going to give it to us, and we get there and suddenly we don't feel fulfilled. It's that whole example of why so many entrepreneurs, they get the big exit and then they have a depressive crash because they thought that it was going to be their answer. Suddenly all their problems in their life are going to be fixed because they had all of this money. But actually what it did was they had a hole inside of them before, and they'd been filling the void by more success, doing these different things. And then when they actually sold their company, the hole just got bigger because money is a magnifier, and it just opened them up. Last year, I was president of Entrepreneurs Organization. That's how we met, Ross. And it was the year of COVID. So at the start of the year, I planned for a whole year about my presidency. I was very intentional about it. I set up all these different events and all these metrics of what I defined would be an incredible year of EO presidency. And when March came, COVID came, and basically everything shut down. And I had the most epic last quarter planned. My board didn't even know some of the things I had planned. It was going to be the most wild galas, it was going to be events, all these things bringing it together. And for a second there, it was actually a little bit longer, it was probably an hour, I went into a bit of a poor me state. For a moment there, I was just like, well, there's my presidency ruined. I'm going to be remembered as crap president. I can't do any of these things. And I started to feel really sorry for myself, and I started going down a shame spiral. And then I remembered, hang on, Finn, you're a guy with intentionality. I'm sure you prepared for this somehow. And I went back to my one page document where I was planning out my year. And yes, there was all these goals and metrics, but above it, there was a one-line statement, which was, this is my intention for how I want to feel throughout my year of EO presidency. And it just said, I want to be proud of my leadership. And that just saved me. In that moment, I realized, okay, my intention for the year was I want to be proud of my EO leadership. And yes, there's a bunch of goals and metrics which would help define that, but ultimately that's what I wanted to feel. So I suddenly went, well, okay, I'm still EO president. Right now, what would I need to do to feel proud of my leadership? And it just sent me on a course of events. I quickly realized, well, I needed to get the whole EO chapter together. I needed to instill confidence. I needed to create a strategy that would look after people who couldn't afford the membership right now. And I just went on straight flow state, didn't even think. And I tell you what, I was more proud of my EO leadership than I ever could have been without any of those goals and metrics, because I was just so in the state of leading. And that's an example of how focusing on these intentions and these feelings can give you incredible results and make you feel better each day, because it just grounds you rather than going after some materialistic object, which might be completely wrong, some objective. And we see this in companies all the time. Like sometimes the goals that we put down are the biggest distractors and really take away from enjoying what we're doing right now.
I think part of this is thinking about the internal people, like the people who are pushing your business forward, who are building that brand, who are engaging your customers every day, are feeling exactly like you're saying. So how do you liberate them of those goals and metrics that were set in a time before, kind of the game changed, the world changed? But I think what's also really interesting is thinking about that from your customer's perspective. How has their world shifted? How's their thing changed? So if you're servicing them in one way and that goal is just unobtainable anymore, like how do you help them get somewhere else? How do you guide them to the next sort of space?
It's make life a game you can win by setting your own rules rather than conforming to social conditioning. So this is the idea that the life that you're playing, you don't have to play because your parents have said this, your school have said this, your cultural conditioning, your peers. You can go on a completely different path and you can define what's winning. So often we've defined what's winning is we've got to have this amount of money in our bank account. We're scaling our company this particular way. We're this particular weight. Like there's so many different parameters. And if you make the parameters too hard, you can't win that game. And you're always going to be feeling in lack. You're going to be feeling scarce. You're going to be feeling like a failure. So instead, why wouldn't you make it a little bit easier? Doesn't just because you make it easier doesn't mean that you're not going to perform. So often we think that if I stop making it life really hard for myself, I'm going to stop growing. That's not true at all. So what I like people to do is like, what if you defined that the game that you could win was that at the end of the day, I could sit and have dinner and reflect against my intention against the morning. And I had an experience which enabled me to learn and grow a little bit more. So I could reflect on an experience and paradigm shifts. But my intention today might be to feel more love or give more love. And at the end of the day, I sit down at dinner and I reflect on the day and I was like, you know what? In that situation, I did choose love. And what I learned from that was if I do that again, I'm going to get greater results. And suddenly I've created a game I can win. I can feel good. But if you define it as, well, I had to read a book, I had to get these amount of sales, I had to run this amount of time, it's going to be really, really hard. And this is why so many people are feeling miserable and feeling like they need to go to other substances to make them feel better. And they're just layering things on, is because we've gone into this world where it's like more, more, more. You've got to keep driving and everything. And I actually think it's not working for us. And I see people who are just in this place of love and joy. They're not stopping. Like they're not producing. They're still creating, and it's coming from a better place. Principle 5 is to eliminate friction by creating freedom through self-made boundaries. So we want to eliminate friction. And the way we do that is we create self-made boundaries, and that gives us more freedom. It gives us more space. So let me give you an example of that. So think of why intermittent fasting has worked so well as a way to manage weight or loss. What they did was, rather than making it really complex, they went, let's have a self-made boundary. I'm going to have a self-made boundary that I'm only going to eat within an 8-hour period of each day, 8 hours or 10 hours, whatever it is. That's a self-made boundary. I know I'm going to eat from 10 to 6. And that gives me a lot of freedom because I know that as long as I stay within that self-made boundary, I can really eat what I want and I'm still going to get results. And through that eliminates a lot of friction because every time I'm thinking whether I can or can't eat it, I know, well, I can because I'm in this time or I'm not. So it's given a lot of freedom and it's eliminated that friction. So what I like to do is like, where else can you do that in your life? Think of money. A lot of people have friction. Every time they go for a spend, they're like wondering, oh, can I afford this? Can I do this? What's happening here? So in a way you could create a self-made boundary saying that, well, I'm going to have all my money automatically going into different investments, different strategies, paying off debt as soon as my paycheck comes in each month. And then I'm going to allocate an amount of money every week called my personal spending amount, which I know that as long as throughout the week I use that money and I can't go over because there's no more money, it's a boundary. I've created a self-made boundary. I can spend it on whatever I want. If I want that coffee, I can go spend it. If I want those shoes, I can go do that because I know that I'm not hurting myself. I'm not hurting myself because I've got everything else set up. So I love thinking about that throughout the life. Is like, how can you create those self-made boundaries? They're actually positive because they're giving more and more freedom in our lives. And then we eliminate this friction, and no one wants friction in their life because it slows us down and it irritates us as well.
think a lot of people struggle with the budgets that they allocate to their teams. And I
Yep.
think you can definitely, if you create those boundaries well enough, or even better, if you co create those boundaries together, then everyone can just do the job that you paid them to do, as opposed to having to come back all the time and be like, is this okay?
And thinking about race cars and planes, we want to eliminate friction because it slows us down. So by
Mm.
creating these self-made boundaries, exactly how you described in business, everything speeds up because the decision making is happening continuously because they know that they don't need to check. They don't need to come. And it frees you as the leader as well. That's the most empowering thing is that you don't have to, you put in good boundaries and then you don't have to be involved as much, which is ultimately what we want as a leader, because then we can spend more time in a creative zone and thinking bigger picture rather than getting caught up in the minutia.
Yes.
So number 6 is to connect to your true nature by practicing the power of presence. I'm sure you've had a shower before and you've suddenly had this great idea, this great moment. And what enabled that is that you were just in a place of presence. You're there right now, right here. And because of that, your true nature came through. And your true nature is this divine, powerful source. It's not limited, it's abundant. We have this internal knowledge, this wisdom, and it comes through. It's a very similar example of like when we walk through nature, we're in a power of presence. We're stopping, we're getting out of our thoughts, and we get into our body, and our true nature comes through. And it's why so many times people feel lighter, they feel more loving, more powerful when they're in these environments. So we need to make sure we get back to our true nature all the time. And I truly believe our true nature, when you come down to it, is an element of love. Like we all are love. But there's certain gifts that we've each been given. And when sometimes when we're operating just in the reactionary mindset, we're operating in the day to day, the chaos, we forget who we really are. And it's why so many people need to have retreats, or they need to go on psychedelic journeys, or they need to do something to get them back to who we are. You don't have to get to a place where you've lost yourself so much and you need to go on a retreat or sabbatical to find yourself. If you practice the power of presence each day, you'll come back to that place. Principle 7 is to experience peace and joy by learning to choose love over fear. So there's a few key elements there. Is that ultimately we want to feel peace and joy. That's why we try to go on this path of creating things like working all this area to make money, because we believe that if we have this, it's going to give us some joy, but it's also going to feel peace. That's what the security blanket comes on. People are focusing on security. But the problem is if you're focusing on security, it actually breeds insecurity because you realize that you believe that you need certain conditions around you to make you feel safe and secure. So what we're really wanting is peace. We just want to feel peaceful and some joy, core emotions as well. And the way to do that is to learn how to choose love over fear. So that means in any particular moment, there's two core emotions: love, fear, truth, illusion. Which one are you going to be in? Are you going to be in the place of the ego, which is fear, or you're going to be in place of divine, God, source, whatever you believe in, nature, and which is love? And when we do that, we start feeling more peace and joy, because when we learn, and this is why I say it's a learn, because our conditioned state is actually to choose fear. When you actually think about where we've come from, fear was a, a feeling which enabled us to stay alive. It was like we've got a saber-toothed tiger out there, and where we need the fear response to put us into a place where cortisol and adrenaline will run through our body, puts us on high alert, and we can get away and live. But the problem is that we don't live in that environment anymore, and we think that an email is the equivalent to a dangerous animal which is going to kill us. So we keep choosing fear, and when we do that, we don't have any peace or joy. We're always on this reactionary state. We get a flood of chemicals which come through our body, and it actually breaks down. It's what causes stress, and it causes to get illnesses after time. So we need to override that and learn to choose love. So how do you choose love in these moments? Well, if someone, you feel like you're getting triggered from someone, Perhaps you're just choosing a fear state. And what if you chose love and you got out of that, and through that, you might actually be able to listen to them more and realize they're not trying to hurt you at all.
When you're thinking about this in your company, like how are you making peace or love in the people who you serve's lives? Like
Mhm.
and if you can connect to that and you can communicate that, that's such a powerful message. Because coming back to something you said earlier, we're not talking about benefits, we're not talking about us, we're not talking about our products, we're talking about this is what I can do for you, this is the world that I can offer you, if you choose to accept. And I think that's such a great message to give to people.
And think about leaders as well. What's our role is to make sure that everyone feels calm, peaceful, and connected. And yes, we've just had a event in the world which is putting our business under risk, but we are the calm ones. We're peaceful, and through that we instill that confidence with other people, and it's about choosing love. If you put it on a fear, people are going to be in a state, it'll work for a period of time, cortisol will rise up and they'll be on high alert and they'll be really productive, but they burn out. We know that. Like, people can't sustain that level of chemicals flooding through our body for a period of time. Everything starts breaking down and our cognitive ability becomes so less productive. So that's where it goes back into that linking with that principle about energy over time. Is we need to be making sure that our people, they're not in a high beta state. They're not stressed out. They're calm, because that's where they're going to connect to their true nature and produce their greatest work. But unfortunately, people think that we need fear to get certain results. It's why we're actually so self-critical of ourselves. We believe if we stop being self-critical, we're just going to become a sloth and we're going to suddenly lie there and do nothing, which is complete lie. Like, it's not true at all. If you naturally, if you're in a place of love, you want to do good things. You want to go out and serve others. You want to go create because you're feeling positive and optimistic. So we need to let go of that story. It's the way the ego controls us, is thinking that we need to be hard on ourselves to actually produce anything. It's not true at all.
Hello YouTube, I'm Ross Drakes, I'm the founder of Nicework, and thank you so much for your time at watching this video. If you're seeing me, it means you made it all the way to the end, so we've at least done something right. If you enjoyed this, we'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button and that thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And I think more important than that is, if you know someone who might need to hear this, if you think someone out there who needs this message in their life, please spread the link, because it makes a huge difference to the world, and it allows us to fulfill our message of making sure that there are no more bad brands in the world. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you in the next video.